This summer's drought has continued into the fall. The lack of rain has depleted Burlington's water supply, prompting a water ban that remains in effect. Last week, BNEWS anchor Phil Gallagher went to the Mill Pond Reservoir to meet DPW Director John Sanchez to get an update on the current situation.
John, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Phil, for inviting me.
Obviously, water is a very hot topic these days. You've instituted a complete water ban. Burlington is not the only Eastern Mass community that's suffering the drought.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, at this point, most of Eastern Massachusetts is on an extreme drought, and most of the communities around have some kind of a water ban, and actually most of them have a full ban, as we do as well.
Okay, you did a tour in Billerica before you got here. Have you seen conditions this bad in your experience?
Actually not. This is, for me, is a first. Obviously, when we worked in Billerica, our water source was the Concord River. It's a little different than what we have here. It gets better a couple of times, but never like what I've seen this year here.
Okay, we've got some shots of what the reservoir looks like. We'll get another shot before we leave. But let's talk about the water supply itself. Burlington is self-sufficient in water from two sources, the Mill Pond and the Great Meadow. Tell us about the Mill Pond.
Well, this plant is peculiar in a way. The reservoir that is behind us here has a lot of capacity, particularly in the summertime when we have rains, occasional rains. What is peculiar about this reservoir is that the only way to get water to it is by pumping water from the Shoshan River in Billerica. So as you can see around it, we're pretty much at the highest point all around us, which means that runoff doesn't really fill this reservoir. The problem with that is when we have dry years, I mean, we had one last year. This year we had a big drought, but last year was also a dry year. We can't pump water from the river to the reservoir.
Because it does not reach the intake pipe, or what is the reason for that?
We are regulated for how much water has to be in the river before we are able to divert water here. Obviously, you know, the fish need water and we can suck the river dry. So we have to wait until that happens. So even if we get rain, as we have had on occasional this summertime, it has never been enough to get the river to that flow for us to be able to divert water to the reservoir. And that's what makes this reservoir a little different. Most of the other reservoirs which have natural runoff going to them will fill up.
Natural springs, things
yeah,
like that.
we in fact, on this one, we have two brooks that run under the reservoir and through the reservoir without feeding the reservoir.
So the total capacity is roughly 550. What's the usable capacity?
We have about 330 million gallons of usable capacity at this reservoir.
And during normal conditions, what percentage of supply is provided by the reservoir versus the Great Meadow?
On a normal year with the average rains, we probably use about 50-50 nowadays, sometimes a little more actually out of the Mill Pond, because the Mill Pond is more efficient to operate, so it saves us money, so we try to use as much as we can out of the Mill Pond. When we go into a drought mode, we turn to mostly using the Vine Brook, although it's more expensive to run, but we need to preserve the water over here.
Okay, what are the efficiency differences between the two plants? Why is it more efficient to be running here?
It's a lot of electricity use. The Vine Brook reservoir, sorry, the Vine Brook aquifer, we need to draw the water with pumps, and so that's a big expense. And the treatment itself, we have to aerate the water, so we actually have to pump it several times as part of the process before we actually, again, pump it out into the system.
Okay, let's talk about treatment. What are the differences between the Mill Pond treatment plant and the type of treatments that you perform here versus those at the Great Meadow?
Yeah, this is a conventional treatment plant, surface water treatment plant. So we add chemicals for natural sedimentation and natural chlorination going through it. So it's no different than, say, what Billerica may have, Cambridge, and most of the communities have. The one at the Vine Brook is a really specialized treatment plant. We treat the wells for iron and manganese, but actually we treat the water for a lot of other contaminants.
Trichlorofluoroethane.
A lot of VOCs that we have over there, and as you know, the area of the aquifer was a former site of many industries. Fortunately, a lot of the groundwater got polluted at the time, and we need to treat for that, and that's why it makes it so expensive and so different than what you typically see around us.
Okay, so that steel cylinder that you see at the great meadow is an aeration tower. And there's a bunch of ping pong balls in there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. We get the water to drop from the top, we pump it, and then we pump air going up. And there's more than one. The aerators, we have 3 aerators there. And that's what they do. They remove everything that is volatile from the water, and just to make it safe to drink.
Now that off gas is because it's lighter than water, and how do you dispose of that?
That goes out in the atmosphere. That's where it goes, and that's correct. That's lighter than water, and that's the reason we have it.
What have the readings been? This is now, must be 14, 15 years that we've had the aeration process in place. What have the readings been in terms of the inflow of the water contamination going into the treatment plant?
Yeah, we have seen a slight decline. I mean, we do a monitoring system. We have some areas we test the groundwater 4 times a year, sometimes some of them only once a year, because we want to see the trending. And the trending on the VOCs have been going down through the years, which is a good thing. Unfortunately for us, though, as the trending has been going down, we're also able to test at lower levels that we used to be able to
because
test
of the
before. Technology has come up now, and one thing that we've been dealing with over the last few years is a compound that in the past was even non-detectable, and that's called 1,4-dioxane. So 1,4-dioxane, unlike VOCs, does not come out of the water by aeration. Now, all these years in the past, because of the testing methods that we had, it was never detected in the water. Once that there were new ways to test for that chemical, DEP decided to lower the allowable limit, and they lowered it from 3 parts per billion to 0.3 parts per billion. Per billion.
Okay. So that's like about 3 minutes since the birth of Christ. In terms of, if we compare it to time.
Yes, it is an absolute minute amount that we test for right now. And what has happened now is some of the wells that in the past were non-detect, now we actually have readings. We can read like 0.5, 0.7 parts per billion. As the water leaves the treatment plant, we can't leave with anything more than 0.3 parts per billion. What has happened is we were so close to that limit that over the last 4 years, and we started by shutting down certain wells where those levels were higher than allowable. And since 2013, we have not run 3 of those wells. So out of the 7 wells that we have at the Vine Brook, 3 have been offline, just so we don't go beyond that limit.
Now the main pumping station is still offline, though, isn't it? Was that iron and manganese naturally organic occurring compounds that shut those off? Well station 1.
That was well station, I believe it was 7 and 8. 1 and 2 are working. You know, so we have 1 and 2. Those are the ones near the Francis Wellman School. Those operate for us, as well as 10 and 11, which are behind calls. It's the 3 wells that are next to the treatment facility, the
3,
ones
4,
that we
and 5.
3, 4, and 5.
Right.
Now that has created a bigger problem for us now, because those 3 wells combined used to give us about 1 million gallons a day of water. So now that plant went from producing about 3 million to producing only 2. So that makes it very difficult for us right now to actually operate year-round with the 2 treatment plants.
Right. Now, what about extenuating circumstances in terms of an add-on for the treatment plant for this additional? I presume it's a carcinogen.
Yes. Well, there are treatment processes for it, and in fact, what we're looking at it, we're doing evaluations right now to see what is the best route for the town. And the reason for that is every year it seems like between DEP and EPA, they'll come up with some new contaminants that we're not even aware of right now that we have to treat for. So we're doing some analysis to see what is the best way to go into the future. Is it best to put treatment over there, or is it best to get some supplemental water from, say, the MWRA? Because when you're missing that water, which is not going away, we're still going to miss it, we have to find a way to do that quickly. Another solution may be new wells in an area that they're not contaminated. So there's many different ways that you can round it up, but in effect, you know, it's I call it the 1, 2, 3. You know, we lost 1 million gallons a day. The plant can only make 2 million gallons over there, and this reservoir can provide about 2 million during the drought, but we need 3 on average. So something is missing in the formula if you were to run one plant or the other. So
Now, what are you seeing in consumption? I know we've had an enormous increase, probably a doubling of the number of restaurants, which are the highest water users other than a hospital in a community. What are you seeing for increases in consumption over the past several years?
well, you're going to be surprised about this, as most people are. Our consumption has been going down in average. Over the last 10 years, particularly over the last 5, we can see the curve declining. So as far as the average consumption that we get from businesses, restaurants, and homes, so that matter, all of it has been going down, and we believe it's because of the new efficient toilets and sinks and dishwashers and whatever you want to call it. But we've seen a tremendous increase when it comes to irrigation, particularly on the residential side. We have close to 1,000 accounts that we manage right now. They have second meters exclusively for water in the lawns.
Pools, right,
Yeah.
right. How about your revenue? That had a substantial impact in revenue, the allowance of the second meters, correct? Because you don't get the add-on sewer charge on it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a decline on the sewer side, and obviously on the water side it's been stable, but we lost money on that end as well, which made us raise the rates years ago just to compensate for that. But on the mechanics, on the trying to maintain water for the town, the second meters and irrigations in general have created a big problem. Right now, we did an estimate of how much water is being used, and on the residential side, the water use more than doubles in the summer. It goes, I believe, 113% of what the winter use is.
Everybody wants a green lawn.
Yeah. When you go on the commercial side, surprisingly, they only go up about 60%. So the big increase that we see is on the residential side because of what you said, they want to have the green lawns.
Now, what about regulation of private wells? I often hear this question from residents. They're obviously using the same aquifer, which essentially is under the town of Burlington, although you don't own it. It is a publicly regulated item. What powers over the private wells do you have in terms of regulating the amount of usage?
Yeah, right now we at the DPW, we have no power to regulate them. There is talk at the state level to actually start regulating them because they are not regulated even at the state level. I understand the Board of Health, at least with the new permits that they have been issued, they have been adding the part that if we are some kind of a ban that they should abide by the same type of ban. I will tell you that from my end, I asked residents who do have the wells to please comply with whatever ban we have. I know I can't enforce it, but at the end of the day, it's the same aquifer.
Right.
You know, it's the same source that we have. We notice a difference at the wells at the Vinebrook treatment plant. I mean, this time of the year after this drought, we know the levels have gone down as well over there, even though there's a pretty good sized aquifer.
Okay, now in terms of capacity, one of the things that was an issue 10, 12 years ago was siltation in the stream beds, and also you had siltation here in the reservoir. What's being done to increase the capacity at the Great Meadow and increase the capacity here at the Mill Pond?
Well, on the Great Meadow, what we do is, in Divine Brook, what we do is routinely we rehabilitate the wells. And that's something we do every year. We do 2 wells, 3 wells, depending on the year.
And that's at the wellhead to take
the wellhead itself, it goes through, removes all the iron, manganese, and the other contaminants we may have, and that increases the well capacity dramatically. Here is a little different because here really the siltation we may get here is from the Shoshian River. One thing that we try to do is typically, not during this drought, so I'm talking typically here, when it starts to rain, we wait a couple of days until the river is running cleaner before we start pumping water here. I will tell you this year is a little different because this year we haven't had much rain, so as soon as we can pump water, we've been doing that. However, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some cleanup work here at the reservoir itself. Since we've never seen it this low, we're just going to take advantage of that to actually remove some of the sediments that have accumulated over the years.
Well, let's speak of that for a moment. Years ago, with design floor or whatever, that wasn't futuristic thinking. In the flocking process of taking algae and what have you in the treatment process, they used to dump the sludge back into the reservoir. What happened? Why did that happen? What is happening now?
Yeah, I don't know what the Rex might have been in the 70s, but since then the town actually implemented what is the right thing to do. They have 2 drying lagoons for the sedimentation basins that are behind us. So before the water goes back into the reservoir, all the sediment settled there first, so cleaner water will go back into the
Flushed out,
reservoir.
right.
Unfortunately, like you said, in the past or in the beginning, we did pump all the sludge back into the lagoon, and now we're going to have to go and remove it from it to create some capacity.
Okay, well, talking about the health of the Great Meadow, under your regime, congratulations, the cross-country sewer line was extended around the Great Meadow and not directly through it, so the possibility of overflow of sewage into the Great Meadow was dramatically, if not completely, eliminated. How is that project going? What have you done with the line? Is that redundant now, or is it obsolete? What exactly?
Well, one of the things that happened when we took the line off service and is that immediately filled up with groundwater. We suspected that the line has some leaks in it. We just couldn't believe the amount of leaks that he might have had. So for now, it's offline. We don't have it as a redundant line. We thought about keeping it as a redundant line. After we saw the extent of the water that was coming in, we said, okay, let's put this on hold now. This is a whole rehab job that we may need to do on it, so we just kept it aside.
Right.
We never removed the line. The line is still going through from point A to point B.
And is that cement lined asbestos?
That is not asbestos. That is a special kind of pipe. They call it PCCP. It's pre-stressed cylindrical concrete pipe. It looks like a concrete pipe, but actually has steel reams inside. It's something that was used way back. Nobody uses that anymore.
Mm-hmm. But it's stronger than asbestos cement, correct? And
oh,
you're
yes.
more likely to have seam leakage than you are to have had a collapse in there.
Correct, correct. Although not that particular pipe per se, but some of that type of manufactured pipe had some catastrophic failures in the past. Mm-hmm. And that made us even more concerned at the time that we were trying to get that project through.
Right.
As you know, if that were to happen in the middle of the aquifer, it would be very hard to fix.
Right. Well, we had 3 catastrophic failures, one by the Escadrille, one by the Stoneham, I think, and then one at the top by the old Raytheon building, right at the top of...
like Wayside and
yeah, right at Wayside.
Yes.
So the rest of that line, in your opinion, that's all been replaced. Is the rest of that line integrity solid?
Not all of it has been replaced. So we actually went to town meeting and got extra funding at this past town meeting. No, the one in the spring rather. And we're going to be doing a whole rehabilitation job starting at that point and actually bringing it all the way to Woburn. We've kept an eye on that line as well as some of the other sewer lines in town, and it was time to do some rehab work on it. Even some of the manholes that were replaced on Wayside Road, which I believe is less than 20 years ago, they need major rehab right now. So we're going to be doing that work. It's under design right now, so you're going to see us doing a major sewer job there next year.
Frosty, is there a major headache for the DPW superintendent?
Everything is a major headache for us.
Hey, puppy. So now in an emergency situation, okay, say it continues, level drops, reduced capacity at the Great Meadow. What is your fallback contingency plan?
Well, what we've done is, and it's interesting, if you can see here, we're a little below 130, our intake.
Is that 130 inches?
That's in feet. So we're actually, our intake is at 124.
Okay, anything you'd like to add, a plea to the residents? I mean, they're pretty much complying at this point.
Actually,
right?
2 things. Yeah, one is I do want to thank both the residents and the businesses for once that we instituted that water restriction in July. I mean, people comply with it, and we saw the demand going down substantially, and that's one of the reasons we were able to actually get to this point. With still having water for what we need to. So I do want to thank them for that. And then, and to our neighbors who do have wells, I will ask to please abide by the same rules that your neighbors are complying by. We use the same water source. So, and I know people say to me, because I talk to a lot of people about this, well, it's going back in the ground. It's not. No. You know, it's not. So
it's drying up and going to the atmosphere.
Exactly. So some may make it all the way down there, but the majority is like doing what you just said.
It's raining in the Atlantic. Okay.
So thank you.
That's it here from BNEWS Special Report. Our subject has been the water supply, and our very gracious guest has been John Sanchez in his 10th year as the Burlington DPW Superintendent. Thank you, John.
Thank you.